Let's take what we have learned about root words and affixes and apply them to some examples on IXL. In our first example, we are told that psychology is the study of human behavior and the mind. The root L-O-G-Y or logi means the study of something. What does the root psych mean? In this case, we should be familiar with the word psychology, so we already have an idea of what that root psych means if we're not quite sure. Well, psychology is the study of what? The mind. In this case, we would select mind, and that is correct. The root auto means own or self. What does the word automatic mean? Well, let's look through our examples. So we have working with the help of others, working more slowly than others, or working on its own without outside help. We've already been told that auto means own or self. In other words, we're doing it on our own. So are we working with the help of others? No. Are we working more slowly than others? No, because own or self. Once again, these two examples are focusing on others. Therefore, working on its own without outside help is the meaning of automatic. Let's take a look at an example where we are given a word and told the definition. Let's try to use that definition to see if we can determine the meaning of a root or root word. In this example, we have morphology is the study of the shape and form of things. What does the root morph mean? Well, if the definition is that it's the study of the shape and form of things, then we know that the root word morph would mean shape. Something that is audiovisual is able to be both heard and seen. What does the root vis mean? Well, let's unpack this for just a second. During the lesson, we learned that odd, A-U-D, means to hear. So audiovisual means that something can be heard and seen. To hear, heard. Now, let's focus on the root vis. If the odd is the hearing part of audiovisual, vis needs to be the seeing part. So when we look at our examples, own or self, well, we know that from a previous problem. That's auto. See or look at. Well, audiovisual, about being heard and seen. Therefore, that is the correct answer. Break or burst has nothing to do with audiovisual. Write or draw, nothing to do with audiovisual. So vis means to see or look at. In this example, we have the word reflex, which is a word we should already know. When we hear reflex, one of the first things that comes to mind is when we go to the doctor and have our physical, and he or she tests our reflexes by taking the little rubber hammer and hitting us on the kneecap or on the knee to see how well our reflexes work. So they'll tap the knee, and what should happen is our leg will slightly kick forward. Considering what that means, let's see what our options are and use this to determine the meaning of the root word flex. Our options are shapes or lines, break or burst, bend or curve. Shapes or lines, does that sound like what's taking place when the doctor's testing our reflexes? No. So we can rule that answer out. What about break or burst? Well, when they hit us in the knee, does anything break or bust open? No. Therefore, our final option is bend or curve. Well, what happens when they hit our knee? It slightly kicks forward. Our knee bends. Therefore, the root flex means bend or curve. Here we are given 3 roots and are asked to determine which one means pull or drag. Let's take a look at the roots. Tract, tele, auto. In a previous example, we've already determined that auto means self. So we can rule that example out. What about tele? Well, what's a word that we know that contains the root tele? For example, we have telephone. What is a telephone? What does it do? Well, in this case, it has nothing to do with pulling or dragging. So based on what we already know a telephone is, we can determine that tele has nothing to do with pulling or dragging. By process of elimination, we can determine that tract means pull or drag. An example would be contract. If we think about something contracting, it is pulling closer together. It's getting smaller. Therefore, we can say that yes, our answer is tract. That means pull or drag. In our final example, we are given the word teleconference, and we need to determine what it means. Our options are a meeting between people who are far away from each other, a break or pause taken during a meeting, or a device that writes down what was said at a meeting. With the word teleconference, let's break it down just a little bit. Let's just consider conference. What is taking place in a conference? Well, we know that another word for conference would be a meeting. All 3 examples have something to do with a meeting. Now let's consider tele. Where do we know that word? Well, we've seen that with the word telephone. Knowing what a telephone is, which answer best describes what would take place in a teleconference? Well, in our first option, a meeting between people who are far away from each other. All right, we know a conference is a meeting, and we understand what tele means based off of the root telephone. So a conference between people who are far away from each other could take place over a telephone. Therefore, we can determine that a teleconference is a meeting with people far away. A break or pause taken during a meeting doesn't really make sense. And a device that writes down what was said at a meeting, again, that one doesn't necessarily make sense either. So, a meeting between people who are far away from each other is the meaning of teleconference.